different things like that, like things you would never think of, crazy stuff. We said yes a lot to mostly everything and everywhere.
They weren't just rock stars, they were a brotherhood. Richie Sambora and Jon Bon Jovi built an empire of anthems that defined a generation. But behind the pyrotechnics and power ballads, cracks were forming, silently, painfully. Now, after more than a decade of silence, Richie Sambora is breaking his silence at 65, and what he reveals about his split from Jon Bon Jovi will leave fans stunned. Betrayal, regret, and untold truths come to light. You thought you knew the story, but this changes everything. Don't miss this emotional rock and roll reckoning. Long before the flashing lights, backstage passes, and radio hits, Richie and Jon were just two hungry kids grinding it out in the raw and relentless music scene of New Jersey. Raised in the working-class towns of Woodbridge and Sayreville, their upbringings gave them grit. Jon was fronting the Wild Ones, while Richie was ripping through guitar strings in bands like Message. They performed wherever they could, VFW halls, basements, even parking lots. The two didn't just share a dream, they shared a soul. Influenced by the storytelling fire of Bruce Springsteen and the electrified fury of Led Zeppelin, their connection ran deeper than chords. When Richie Sambora officially joined Bon Jovi in 1983, it wasn't just a lineup change, it was lightning striking. His emotionally drenched solos and natural chemistry with Jon Bon Jovi elevated the band to a new level. At venues like the Fast Lane in Asbury Park, the magic was immediate. Richie's blues-soaked melodies blended seamlessly with Jon's arena-ready vocals, crafting a sound that felt stadium-sized, yet deeply human. Their partnership produced more than just hits. It shaped an era. Richie's talkbox solo in Livin' on a Prayer, the haunting grit of Wanted Dead or Alive, and the tender heartbreak in I'll Be There For You became the very identity of Bon Jovi. Offstage, they were just as close. Backstage photos captured laughter, brotherhood, and genuine connection. Richie wasn't just the guitarist, he was Jon's confidant, his sounding board, and, at times, his emotional anchor. But even during their brightest moments, a quiet divide was forming. While Jon was pushed to the center as the charismatic frontman, Richie, despite co-writing many of the hits and being a creative equal, was slowly nudged into the background. The spotlight favored one, while the other gave the band its soul. Still, Richie stayed, because the music and the brotherhood were enough. Richie Sambora was never about flash, he was about feel. His guitar work didn't just fill space between lyrics, it told its own story. While other glam metal guitarists chased speed and theatrics, Richie brought soul, emotion, and restraint. His phrasing had warmth. His harmonies lifted choruses into anthems. On albums like Slippery When Wet and New Jersey, his touch turned pop rock into something timeless. But behind the scenes, the dynamic was shifting. As the band's fame exploded, Richie's creative input was gradually pushed aside. Decisions were made without him. The music remained strong, but the brotherhood began to fade. What once felt like a collaboration turned into a corporation. Adding to the strain were Richie's personal battles, a turbulent divorce, addiction struggles, and the pain of being away from his daughter Ava, whom he shares with Heather Locklear. The life that once thrilled him became overwhelming. Then came April 2013. Just before a show in Calgary, Richie walked away. No dramatic exit, just silence. He later learned online he'd been replaced by Phil X. No warning, no farewell. After decades, Richie felt not just excluded, but erased. In recent interviews, including an emotional 2024 sit-down with Yahoo Entertainment and the New York Post, Richie finally opened up. His departure wasn't a rock and roll tantrum, it was a necessary exit. He said the band had become toxic. And more than that, he left for someone far more important than music, his daughter. "You don't get those years back," he said. "I didn't want to be a ghost in her life." As Ava entered her teenage years, Richie realized the cost of constant touring. Being a rock star had given him everything, except the chance to be there for his child. Walking away wasn't easy, but it was essential. "I can play guitar forever," he said, "but I only get one chance to be her dad." The public response was mixed. Some called him a quitter. Others called him a hero. But Richie didn't care about the headlines. He cared about being present. His departure wasn't about leaving music, it was about not abandoning his daughter. And today, he considers that decision his greatest legacy. After the split, both he and Jon Bon Jovi remained silent. There were no bitter interviews, no drama, just the eerie quiet of a broken bond. Insiders say the distance had been building for years. Studio sessions became transactional. Creative decisions were made without Richie's input. He described the environment as cold, businesslike, and stripped of collaboration. "I felt like a hired gun," he said. "It stopped feeling like a band. It started feeling like a corporation." But in 2024, more than a decade after that night in Calgary, Richie made an emotional public apology. "I ghosted," he admitted. "I probably should have talked to Jon. I should have explained it better." The apology wasn't an excuse. It was a reflection of regret. Richie never intended to destroy what they'd built. He left to protect his mental health and to save what remained of his personal life. Jon Bon Jovi's response was quiet, but telling. He acknowledged the history with Richie, but stated simply, "We had our run." Jon, now battling a serious vocal injury that required surgery, has shifted his focus. His 2024 album Forever reflects that transition, less about nostalgia, more about reflection and moving forward. To fans, a reunion sounds like a dream. Two legends back on stage, rewriting history. But both men have changed. Their music, their priorities, even their health. None of it aligns anymore. Richie now leans into blues and soul, performing occasionally and living quietly. Jon leads the current Bon Jovi lineup with a more restrained, adult contemporary tone. Today, Richie says he's proud of what they built. That history can never be taken away. He's proud of his daughter, proud of his growth, and proud that he chose real life over rock mythology. Sometimes, the most graceful reunions are the ones that never happen. And in the quiet that followed his exit, Richie Sambora didn't just find peace, he found himself. If this story hit home, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more music revelations. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the truth behind the legends. Thanks for watching.